All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, we've got three quick topics if we can get to them all. We're going to finally go over that Invention Secrecy Act that we've been teasing for a bit.
Hmm.
Then we're gonna talk some dad bod, and then if we have time, ugh, the viral sensation, and actually my thoughts on the response to when people found out her real name and everything. So
Uh, all right. So you wanna start here with this interesting nonsense?
yeah, let me make
Okay.
it to where you can share. Hold on.
So appropriately, I have worn my jacked Ronnie with the Constitution tatted on his chest. Cause all right.
Well, I wore my Snatch Specialist because whether it's the Invention Secrecy Act where we're getting screwed or where you're getting screwed, we're covered.
So let me whip this out real quick. This is Yeah, I got way too many windows and tabs open. Make sure I'm looking at the right thing here. Um, this is Title 35, Part 2, Chapter 17, Sections 181 to I think it's 189.
Yeah, and I
All
would like
right.
to point out that this isn't just somebody talking about something. This is actually the white pages stuff. The,
This is the actual law. Yeah. Now, hold on. You're in my way, thingamadoodle. Let me. So I did find this here. Um, and I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole a little later. This is an organization that is it's kind of a government watchdog accountability type thing, and they've got a lot of stuff on this specifically. The secrecy of certain inventions and filing applications in foreign countries is the act here. Something I will say that did jump out at me immediately is you've got these 7 sections here, and that's it. This is I'm going to switch back over to the Cornell Law website because it's just easier to read there. But you see here, that's the entire bill that we're talking about. So it is interesting that at least back in the 50s, we still knew how to write a law. And when they actually pass a bill nowadays, a small one is under 1,000 pages. But most of the time, you're looking at 1,000 to 2,000 pages.
yeah, we saw
Um,
that with the amendments to Title IX was
mhm,
1,500 pages.
mhm,
It wasn't even the original Title IX, I think, was a page or two.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So uh the the nuts and bolts of it here are are in the opening section here. Um Whenever publication or disclosure by the publication of an application or by the grant of a patent on an invention in which the government has a property interest might, in the opinion of the interested government agency, be detrimental to the national security, the Commissioner of Patents, upon being so notified, shall order that the invention be kept secret and shall withhold the publication of the application or the grant of a patent, therefore, under the conditions set forth hereinafter. It's still gobbledygook, but at least it's understandable legal gobbledygook back in the 50s.
Hmm.
So this was I believe it was enacted in 52. So it was written and debated in I think 50 51 and was enacted in 52. And one of the important things to remember, and you'll see because it pops up a couple of times in the bill where it specifically references the Atomic Energy Commission, because what's going on in 50 to 52, the Soviets get the bomb and the Korean War is going on. So it's pretty clear that the original intent of the bill, to me, it seems, was about nuclear security. But of course, that wasn't put into the bill. It's left very open ended, so it can be applied to anything.
Anything that somebody in the government deems a threat.
Exactly. And that is the first thing. That's why I'm wearing Super Ronnie here with the Constitution tatted on his chest, because right off the top, it's, well, wait a minute. This is blatantly unconstitutional. What does the Fourth Amendment say? Pop quiz, anybody?
Fourth. Oh shit. No, it's not. That's not the one that you can't. They can't make you house soldiers and stuff.
No, that is the third,
Okay, I was
which
close.
which is which always kind of gets made fun of, but that was a big effing deal.
Well, I was assuming for
And
the purpose of that they might have been in the same one, but
well, it is interesting to note the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, shall not be infringed, which seems pretty plain language to me. The Third Amendment is quartering of soldiers,
mhm.
not an accident. And then the Fourth Amendment also related to that. All right. So back to, all right. The right of the
Mm.
people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, unless we say that it's a threat. What's the
Yeah.
Fifth
Well, and I was
Amendment
going
say?
to comment on that before you get to the fifth. Is the whole national emergency thing? We've talked about concept creep before. Think of all of these things that have creeped
Mm-hmm.
unconstitutional things in the name of national
Mm-hmm.
security. You look at the FISA Warrant Act that just got renewed in the name of security. Domestic terrorism is the number one threat. So we need to expand this law from foreign terrorists to our own American soldiers because they're bad people.
The Fifth Amendment, very closely connected to the Fourth, clearly. I don't think the order here was an accident on the part of the founding fathers. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment of indictment of a grand jury, blah, 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 blah. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense twice, nor compelled to witness against himself. And here's the key one that is the blanket protection of the individual from the state. Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, here's
That would
where I
include
think,
intellectual property.
here's where I think, and again, this is going to be a quickie, and I just wanted to look at the statute itself. And if we want to keep going down this rabbit hole, I can get into the um, I can get into the jurisprudence of it, how cases involving this law have been ruled on, because that's really what it comes down to when I talk about how we have a legal system, not a justice system. One of the things that contributes to that is that uh, very rarely does a court actually go back and look at the original law, go back and look at the original law, and is that even constitutional? Instead, what they look at is what have previous courts ruled on this law, and then that essentially expands the law, because the courts are filling in the blanks. That's what we mean when us cranky conservatives talk about legislating from the bench. You're filling in the gaps, you're expanding
Well, not just
law.
crazy conservatives, progressive accuse the right of doing the same thing. So that very specific to your statement, legislating from the court
Mm-hmm.
is used by both sides, just only when the other side does it.
Now, I'm going to guess that if I dig into that jurisprudence, what I'm going to find is that the justification for this act and how it's still in use is this second part here, this last part of the Fifth Amendment, which is the eminent domain provision, which is, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And for anyone who's been paying attention for a while, you know that eminent domain has been horrifically abused in the past decades, and clearly the courts haven't done anything to help out with that, and legislatures just keep doing it.
Well, according to Dr. Stephen Greer, who's the main whistleblower on all the things that have been done with that law,
Mm-hmm.
part of the what they do is they actually pay you for that patent.
Yes.
And so they pay you for 75% of what they think it's worth for you never to do it. But it's not the problem is it's not just okay, well you'll owe us back if you do it
Mm-hmm.
or with interest or something. It's you go to jail for life
Mm-hmm.
where you're probably going to get Epsteined, but it's because they've now officially can't trust you after you sign a contract. So they've got to do something to make sure you never talk to anybody ever again about your ideas. Uh, but yeah, so uh, Dr. Greer, I watched one Bet David, but he's got a full documentary out, and I can't remember the name of it. But uh, as you pointed out, it was probably written for this one specific purpose. But because they didn't state that specific purpose, they can use the national security thing. And from what I understand, their justification for some of the things that they've held back, like an engine that can go 200 miles to the gallon, which is, I think, one of them that was quoted. Uh, that's uh, that's a national threat being translated as, oh, if this comes out, the industry is going to change so rapidly that the economy is going to collapse. That that's their justification for national threat. Uh,
I suspect the other um legal loophole here, again, we have a legal system, not a justice system, is the other part that kind of jumps out at me. Um, is still in the first section here. An invention shall not be ordered kept secret in the publication of the application or the grant of a patent withheld for a period of more than 1 year. See, it's just temporary. It's just temporary. Well, yeah, except that the commissioner of patents can just rubber stamp it ad infinitum to keep the secrecy forever. Um, Also, section 186. Okay. First, compensation, because you brought up punishment, which I wanted to get to, but first, the compensation. So I think this is probably where the legal loophole is of, well, it's essentially eminent domain. No, it's not. First of all, because eminent domain clearly is for public use, not because the government doesn't like it. So we're
but
going to,
here's the other problem with that. Again, everybody watch the interviews and watch the documentary is, would you consider military operations public use?
they kind of should be, but that's not how they're used.
Yeah, so some of these things that they've stolen from the person who invented it in the first place are being used in these situations. So, I would consider that public use because the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force are all public.
Mhm. All right, and you brought this up. If full settlement of the claim cannot be effected, the head of the department or agency may award and pay to such applicant his successors,
Sexers, no,
something
that's
with
the
that,
last segment. That's the last segment.
assigns or legal representatives a sum not exceeding 75 percentum of the sum which the head of the department or agency considers just compensation for the damage and or fair use.
Which is funny because that the
What?
one example I gave, the 200 miles on a gallon engine, how do you qualify what is just compensation? Because that patent and royalties on that patent for as long as it lasts for something that revolutionizes an industry, that compensation is huge, but I bet that's not what they get.
Remember this, because I want to get to the punishment part here real quick, because this is a huge red flag for how this is brazenly unconstitutional. Um, Penalty. Now, I assume this has been amended, but the penalties aren't actually that severe. No, be fined not more than 10,000 or imprisoned in not more than 2 years or both. But I'm guessing from the interviews you've listened to and the things I've heard before I stopped listening so I could look at it myself, is that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so just kind of to qualify what we're doing here is we're not saying this whistleblower is telling the right thing. But when we looked up the actual legal documents, it was like, oh gosh, there's at least enough truth to look further into it. Uh,
All right. That is. Yeah, stop that. All right. So let me get dorky on you here and bring this up. All right. This is from Black's Law, 6th edition. All right. Due process does not mean there is a process and that it is followed. Okay. Due process
do
is
we
a
not know that recently? Jeez.
yeah. Due process is a specific legal idea that goes way back for us to English common law. And then as it evolved, through the what we call the Enlightenment period into the modern period, it was added on to and essentially um due process of law implies the right of the person affected thereby to be present before the tribunal which pronounces judgment upon the question of life, liberty, or property in its most comprehensive sense, to be heard by testimony or otherwise, and to have the right of controverting by proof every material fact which bears on the question of right in the matter involved. If any question of fact or liability be conclusively presumed against him, this is not due process of law. Presumed against him. It is just presumed. Oh well, this violates national security, and then that is fact, and there is no controverting that. There is also no due process here because there is no tribunal, as Black's Law says. It's just you are making the authority here, the agency, the regulator, the bureaucrat, you are elevating him to not just judge and jury, but also to both attorneys. He is the entire court. This individual, this bureaucrat, is the entire court, because due process means the government makes a claim. Hey, you can't publish that patent because it's a threat to national security, so we're going to seize it. No. You prove that in court. Now, if there are secrecies involved, sometimes we have closed courts. That is a thing. And that can get a little shaky in and of itself, but there is still a process. There is still a combative process. You have the government making a claim here. You have the individual or group refuting the claim here. And then you have an impartial judge and jury. There is no impartiality here whatsoever, because I didn't want to go too far in the weeds, but part of the statute says that, well, if you don't like this, you can appeal to the person who made the claim in the first place. That is the exact same rant we have been making about the FBI investigating itself and said, well, there were some small problems here, but we fixed it. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, and if a progressive accidentally listened this far into our episode, we'll say the same thing about police unions. They investigate their own, and that's why Chauvin's back on the street after 14 offenses, right? because it's they're their own people. They investigate themselves. Uh, but from a civilian standpoint, what people don't realize, and this goes for the IRS to anything, is you can't sue the federal government unless the federal government gives you permission to sue. A bureaucrat, like you said, will take their little signature and go, oh, no, there's not enough to bring a case to court. It's like the DA that turns down every case, right? It's just,
Yeah.
and it's of their
So
own people. So if you say, IRS, I think you made a mistake. We don't think we made a mistake. So
yeah, yeah. The IRS is a brazenly unconstitutional organization. It shouldn't exist as it is because it violates every step of due process. That so that's an example of something that has just been around and allowed to exist, and we just accept it that that's the way it is because that's the way it always been. No, no, no. Just because we're dealing with, you know, just because we're dealing with this kind of a case instead of that kind of a case doesn't mean that suddenly the burden of proof is on you. That's the way the IRS operates. The IRS says you're in arrears, you failed to pay, you did not pay appropriately. Now we're going to come in without a warrant. We're going to demand that you hand over every piece of paper in related to your finances and that you prove to us that you didn't do these things.
yeah, that was there was a good meme on that several years ago where it was someone asking an IRS person, how much do I owe? And the IRS person says, well, here's these forms, figure it out. And then they turn in the forms, and then the IRS comes back and says, you didn't pay enough. And then the same person says, if you couldn't tell me how much I needed to pay, how do you know if I didn't pay enough?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. They can. And
Which, to that sense,
mm-hmm.
they should just send you a bill.
Exactly. And if here is what you owe if you're taking the standard deduction. If you don't want to do this, if you want itemized deductions, then start doing the paperwork. But here's your bill if you're just going to take the standard deduction. And something like 80% of people just take the standard deduction. Someone like you, a small business owner, you can't do that because you
We
have
do
so many
both.
expenses that, oh, you do both?
No,
Okay.
when you're a sole proprietor LLC, you when, like, say Nicole, my wife, gets her W-2, we plug that number in because she's an employee. She doesn't have expenses
Mm-hmm.
associated with running the business. But when I report my income, the net income is what the business brought in minus deductions.
Mm-hmm.
And then that number that comes out of that at the end goes into the big pot with both of us filing jointly. And from there, you take the household standard deduction or itemize more, which we don't qualify for a lot of the itemization. So we just take standard deduction.
I just had a brain fart. I'm trying to remember. There's a term for it, and I can't find it. Okay, so anyway, um, for some inexplicable reason, and um I don't know the root of this. I don't know when it started, and I don't know what the judicial philosophy of this is because it's just patently absurd in a lowercase l liberal democracy that this is a thing that exists, which is judicial deference to administrative agencies. What? So the reason something like the IRS exists and is able to operate the way it does is in large part because we no longer have separation of powers. If the judicial branch, which is supposed to be a separate branch, is deferring to the executive branch and just assuming that the regulatory agencies know what they're doing and aren't violating either the statute they're supposedly enforcing or the base statute, which is the Constitution, then we don't have a impartial judiciary. We have an extension of the executive branch,
Mm-hmm.
and that is I am sure if I go digging into, the jurisprudence on this, that's what we're going to see, is that the courts have for the past 70 years just continually deferred to whatever agency is making the claim. Well, the Department of Defense says this is a threat to national security. Okay, well, they know what they're doing. Rubber stamp it. Meanwhile, the person who is supposed to have an impartial, separate power to go to when the legislative or executive branch is being abusive, they have nowhere to go because it's just an extension. It's just a subset of the executive when it does that, and that's why this exists. Also, to your earlier point, that I think the other reason this exists is because Cold War nuclear threats. They I am sure looked at this and said, well, no, this is an existential threat. We have to overcompensate. If we're going to err, we're going to err on the side of not having the entire continent literally turned to glass.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
they
well, and here's
erred
the
in that
here's the
way.
third answer. There were nefarious people that knew what the outcome would be
Yeah.
of that and
Yeah.
how it would be used, but they weren't the person that cast the vote to put the law in place. But don't give those guys too much credit because a lot of them purposefully turned a blind eye to
Mhm.
who was doing it. Because I bet you the $5 trillion oil industry was putting a bug in the ear of the congressperson that their lobbyist was supposed
Yeah.
to talk about. Like, you don't want everybody on the other side to have the extra powerful nuclear bombs, do you? This is a national security threat. Somebody can just come up with an invention and patent it, and then the whole world would have it. And
Well, and this gets extra messy when you start to get into dual use technologies, which as we have become more technologically advanced, the you know this is a dual use technology. This is a supercomputer in my pocket, and the components of which, well, heck, you could just use this as a military technology. You hook up a controller to it, and now suddenly it's attached to a drone, and I'm watching the drone feed while I, drop a bomb on somebody. So you could very easily have said, "Oh no, the iPhone, we're gonna seize that. That's never gonna happen. That
mm-hmm,
that's a threat to national security." But it also makes big bucks, so maybe we won't seize that.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So I tell this goes along with a lot of other topics we talk about. Most of our problems with politics would be solved if we just took lobbies out of it. If they were actually public servants.
Mm-hmm.
I would even say give them a pay increase, but they're not allowed to take lobby money. There
Oh,
you go.
geez. Speaking of that, we haven't gone down the Fauci rabbit hole in a while, but did you see several weeks ago? I saw a story on the millions of, speaking of patents, the millions in patent royalties that were paid to people at the NIH, CDC, etc. It was a big number. The people who are supposed to be overseeing those companies. This seems like a slight conflict of interest, and I bring that up to also point out that, speaking of the past several weeks, there's been a lot of hyperventilating about the bird flu. Anyone else notice that?
Yeah,
Anyone else
I just saw the
notice?
headline that was, "Would you take the new bird flu vaccine?" It's like, no. I will just not touch random birds and not
Well,
wash my hands. And
it's somehow when the commie cough hit, suddenly out of nowhere, the entire world forgot that we know how to deal with upper respiratory infections. We've been doing it for a long time.
well, the big difference there here is a flu would have a liquid component. So as long as that bird doesn't spit in my face, but as long as that doesn't happen, or I give mouth to mouth to a bird, or You know, any
Apparently eyes is where most infection comes
because you touch
from a
something
bird
and you
to
rub
an
your
eye
eye.
worker, or you get
Yeah.
particulate into your eyes because people think to cover their mouth and nose. They don't think to cover their eyes, and they
Which
get particulate in the
the
eyes.
difference is there your eyes would just basically give it a saline solution to transfer down to your nose because that's where your tear ducts drained.
Mhm.
So
Instead of having all of the filters that it has to go through here. Yeah.
yeah, well,
So
and also it's in liquid form, so it just kind of sticks to the sides, and that virus breeds and breeds and breeds, where the
mhm.
mucus itself can stop that before it gets too far back if it's airborne.
the the connection here to, saying same song, different verse is that I don't remember who I first heard say this, but the retort from the right about the when leftist anti-capitalists would go overboard about how companies just want to kill people, is the retort from the right was always, why would you want to kill your customers? These, you're saying these are all greedy companies and all they care about the bottom line, then why do they want to kill their customers? That makes no sense. The problem with that when it came to the Comicov is that we weren't the customer.
Mm-mm.
The government was, and we're supposedly the government, but we're not, because they weren't selling us the treatment, they were selling them to the government, which is what is happening here. These same companies are trying to sell a vaccine or a treatment for the bird flu now. They want governments to spend billions, if not trillions of dollars stockpiling these things and then preferably mandating their usage. Same song, different verse.
Same
That.
song. The
All
problem
right.
is they did make one adjustment. They the bird flu is a lot more fatal or lethal than
Mhm.
what we just went through.
But not
So
nearly as transmissible because of that liquid component.
yeah.
All right. Speaking of viruses and pandemics and trying to keep yourself out of the clutches of the broken
Let me
system.
close out the last conversation first. So this episode we went through the actual law of
Mhm.
the act. Next one, hopefully, Heath has had time to listen to the whistleblower and what he has to say and everything. So to actually be more, that one will be more about the content of what was being stopped
Mhm.
and what actually may be there for the government to use, but not us use. But then when you see the government use it, they say, "Oh, aliens." So
Yeah,
notice
funny how
aliens have
there's,
been
yeah,
happening a lot
yeah,
more lately.
yeah. Look over there.
Yeah.
It's the Simpsons episode. Hey, Mark McGuire, is the MLB really spying on us? Well, I could answer that question, or I could hit some dingers.
Nice. Okay, so on to the next one.
So, what did you want to? Not, I'm kind of surprised that this came up for me years ago when I said, Dad bod, what the heck are these people talking about? And I was confused, but apparently it came back up just recently for you, and you were also confused.
Well, no, I wasn't necessarily confused. There was just something I hadn't heard before because I knew the bod thing transformed into the bald, short, belly gut guy that women feel comfortable with because I know he's not going to leave me because he
Yeah.
can't, that
Well,
kind of thing.
I first heard the term in reference to um pictures of Leonardo DiCaprio where he doesn't have that leading man bod, and
Yeah,
I was
that
hearing
was actually a
defenses of the
yeah.
dad bod. I'm like, just, you're fine with him having a dad bod because he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, so there's three main components to it. That was already a couple years after it had become starting to become popular
Mm-hmm.
because it originally meant what I think dad bod should be. But uh, this is what happens when they put something in Shape magazine and suburban white women take a hold of
Oh,
it. They're
jeez.
so awful. Uh,
Well, let me tell
is
you what I thought, because
well
when I first heard the term, and
one
see
is
if
the
this is
money,
what you
like you
agree.
said.
No, no,
One,
but see, when I first heard the term, I assumed what I think you were assuming, which was, oh, the dad, like, because so like my dad, he didn't work out, he didn't lift weights, but he always had broad shoulders and chest. He could always pass his PT test, even as he aged in the army, and he, and he had a gut because he liked chicken fried steak like the rest of us.
Mhm.
Um, or it for your dad, it was probably the beer gut because beer. Um,
No, he fluctuated.
mm,
He fluctuated, and he would get it, like his fat pattern is the same as mine, where uh, I'll gain if I gain a lot, then it's kind of uniform. But if I try to lose weight again, you have to go through a stage of where it actually looks worse
mm,
because I kind of melt from the ribs down, which means you get that ribbon around the middle. If it kind of gets to that point. But no, dad bod to me was exactly what you just described. It's a strong, capable man that you can tell physically when you look at him.
mhm.
Uh,
Because
but
he
but
works,
also
because
lives
he does
in yeah,
stuff.
but also lives in normal life.
Mhm.
That they don't have the trust fund that allows them to spend 3 hours a day in the gym, half of it on your phone.
Yeah.
But and also the time to do like bodybuilder meal prep and all of those things.
Mhm.
So someone who looks like they're strong and capable physically, but also is not perfect. You don't need a six pack to beat somebody up in the ring. That's over. Look at BJ Penn,
Mhm.
even or another example, Chuck Liddell back in the day. Yeah, in a weight class sport, you got to kind of maximize your performance with body fat and muscle so you can make weight. But at the same time, that you can be perfectly capable with a little bit of a gut or a little
And
bit of
there's
a
a
ribbon.
reason the lower weight classes tend to be the guys who are more ripped.
Yeah, but you also have a broad chest. You've got big shoulders. There's a reason these things are attractive to women because they implied you could chuck a spear real hard and
Mhm.
kill the animal that will feed your family for the next 3 weeks. So that's what kind of the dad bod meme started as, and that's exactly what it should have been. And then it took about 5 years to now where it became your beta male, balding accountant,
Non-threatening. That's what the
exactly
dad bod is
non-threatening. And one of them
non-threatening.
is those people right now in today's society make more money than the big strong people, professional sports aside. But
Mhm.
I think I can even make that statement because there's not enough professional athletes to shift it that far.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's the money part. Those people tend to make more money now. And especially if you're in an area like ours, you're pretty much preordained married by the time you're out of high school sometimes. And then if not, you go to a college and you marry the first girl you find in the youth group you went to. So it's that type of personality because you've got the guy, he's like, I'm punching up. I'm punching up on this one. And the girl who's saying he won't cheat on me because who else is going to take him, you know? So there's the money, there's the security, and then the third one that came up in panels that I saw, including male and female psychologists. This is the one that will get us canceled, though. Women are not only threatened by having a good looking man because they have more opportunities to be approached by other women, but they also like to be better looking than their partner because they ruminate on, oh, my partner is better looking than me, that makes me old and used and da 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 da, fill in the blanks of all the ways you can say the same thing. But so they're not threatened with leaving, they're financially secure, and they don't make me feel bad about myself. And that's why dad bod went so extreme in the other direction. Problem is when you get to a certain point, that's the eventually the semi middle age, but still keeps herself in shape and she's pretty good looking woman that walks in the bar and takes the ring off and puts it in her pocket.
Because you, and this may segue us into Hawk Tuah, um, because you can't escape certain basic laws of the universe.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so, well,
just
this It seems subtle, but it makes perfect sense. This is why you see them take the ring off. Because if it was just about I'm horny and I want to cheat or whatever, they would have taken the ring off long before they walked in the bar.
Hmm.
But they walk in for two reasons before they take it off, because they scan the room real quick and see if there's anything worth taking it off for. Because I already have a husband, I already have the financial security. I'm looking for a good-looking alpha male right now, and so I want them to see that that's all I'm looking for, and they need to scan the room to make sure there's something worth doing that for, because there's risk involved.
Let's get more canceled. This comes from the idea of toxic masculinity. And I say it that way because what it has become is that all masculinity is toxic. Except that's not how the female mind works. You can say all you want that a woman can be a man and they can try, but that's not what's going to satisfy most of them most of the time. That is why you see all these, I'm going to be a career woman, and then they never come back from their maternity leave. Because after they have that kid and after they stay at home with that kid for a while, they realize, I like this. This makes me feel good.
Well, let's use gender correctly here. So sex is male or female, or technically intersex, because that actually exists. But gender is masculine and feminine. So let's talk about the L in the LGBTQ. Look at the more effeminate. There's always an effeminate and a masculine, even amongst females in those groups. When you see hot and feminine doing that together, most times they're lipstick. Okay. But when you see a real couple that I just completely out of closet on both sides, it's usually one very effeminate and one very masculine,
Mm-hmm.
because they still like those traits.
Mm-hmm.
And their masculine partner carries the traits they still like, even though they like, they don't like the twig and berries as much, right? So the pattern's still there, and masculine and feminine might be more of an indicator than male and female in a lot of situations.
So back to how this connects to the dad bod is you've settled for this. Your focus is control and security, but how you're getting it is contrary to your nature. And so that is going to lead to that 35, 40-year-old, 45 going, I'm not happy. Well, duh, because you purposefully chose things that were bound to make you not happy. Because
Uh,
what your focus wasn't actually happiness.
yeah, and if your primary motivator was that paycheck, I bet you your complaint is he doesn't spend enough time with the family. He's always at work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, paychecks come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had emphasized that early in your relationship, just with like, oh, I love that you pick up the check. Oh, I love that you tip so well. I love that, all the things that involve you spending money. You've been trained for that. Now, let's go to the guys and have equal representation of you're responsible for this going on too. The guy started seeing this and was like, I can be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I can be lazy. You know, if that's what they like anyways, now you've just created a justification in their head is, oh, you're being lazy and you're unhealthy right now. I'm just trying to make my wife happy, because dad bod,
Happy wife, happy life.
happy wife, happy life. Yeah. Cuck. Uh, it's the, yeah, I got so much on those, on the inner thoughts there that,
Did this come up in a class discussion? Did you get roasted for being a patriarchal, uh, misogynistic, bad word person?
no, but I am very careful how I use my words, especially when I'm talking about a controversial topic in class.
Mm-hmm.
And I never got, well, part of this is the fact it's kind of over reported what the students actually think before they're brainwashed versus what the message is in the class.
Mhm.
Because you only need to shift the boundary like 3% of people to make it look like it's everywhere. And in my experience, most students are pretty just normal people, even amongst the indoctrinated. They may shift a little one way or the other, but they're pretty much normal. But I do pick my words carefully that I I I wouldn't say the beta males that go dad bod are going to end up cucks, but there's probably a higher percentage there, and that's the opposite of masculinity. So,
Mhm. Well,
but okay, so what the new part was
okay.
that I gave my description of what I thought dad bod should be, which we just went over. And so the person I was talking to said, "Oh, that's called father figure." And I was like, "Ah,
I hate this timeline. I blame CERN. See, when they turned on that giant reactor, they sucked us into an alternate dimension, and this it is the dimension of stupid.
yeah." I don't know the details of how that would work, but I would more go to the effects of the smartphone like that you just held up earlier. Things that used to be something you may never have even experienced in your life become viral.
Mhm.
And so then everybody who has a cell phone, which is almost everybody in the country, knows it. And I think that's more to blame than CERN.
I
Not saying there
suspect,
might be a long-term effect that I don't know about, but
yeah. Well, we've talked about some of that long term effect with the lady with the nice accent whose name I can never remember because it's this ridiculously long
oh
Indian
yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, you know, talking about stop getting your
Char-
mental health advice from Instagram.
Charitz, something like that.
Excuse me. Um, yeah, you know that is part of the point. And that goes to both. She was talking about girls mostly, it, partly because she's a woman herself and that's kind of her focus, but also because women, we're not allowed to say this, young girls, because of their more collective versus hierarchical nature, they're much more susceptible to peer pressure and to mental health issues. Uh, that's just a fact. So that demographic, you are seeing a much more ridiculous shift into the, statistically significant spikes in reported mental health, problems and treatment and whatever. But then on the flip side of that, on the male side of that, I where I think the supercomputer in your pocket flips to is if it becomes too easy to, I've ranted about this before, of just Googling the answer and then just that highlighted box at the top and you go, okay, there it is. There is something to be said for finding an answer. There's something to be said for digging and doing your own research and having to think, where should I go to try and find this answer? Or you could just look at something, some moronic statement by some jack off like Andrew Tate and go, yeah, bro. That's not helping either. That's just making the problem worse. And that's why I think it's good that people like Jordan Peterson came along and, you know, every time he gets interviewed by one of these feminist reporters and they're all, your audience is overwhelmingly male. How is that a bad thing? He's telling young men to become men, and to do that is to take control of your own life. Stop being complacent and lazy and dad bodding it because you can.
Hmm.
Stop just happy wife, happy life because you can, because it's easy.
Yeah, and this is okay. So this is the the up and down part of being masculine, being a masculine male. You can look at lions and you a pride of lions, and this would it will help you visualize it. When asked to do something, when made to do something, I'm not going to say asked. Asked is what we should do to each other as human
Mm-hmm.
beings, but made is what is the right thing at the right time to get the best result. So they're made to do something when they're needed. But if you don't ever make a man do anything, they're going to be lazy as hell.
Hmm.
You know, I brought up lions. The male will defend the pride from other male lions or hyenas and all of those things, but they don't do the catching of the food. So what do they do all day? They sleep all day until some other threat shows up to the pride and they take care of it. And then they go back to sleeping all day.
So,
In that situation, if it was up to the male to catch the food, he'd get up and do it.
and there are times where that happens. That's why I like to use the
Mm.
lion as an analogy, because a while back, I think this was following a pride in South Africa. I was watching this documentary, and the pride had not made a kill for something like a week, which is bad. And so the lead female starts making this call, and the next day the male comes back to the pride because, hey, get over here and help, your family is starving, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the male there to join the hunt, they take down a giraffe, which is a buttload
Pretty
of meat for the
giant,
pride,
yeah,
because
giant
she,
chunk.
as the lead female, she's like 180 to 200 pounds. He's like 6 to 700 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So when he jumps on the back of that giraffe, it goes down. And so that is where I like to use that analogy of, hey, do your damn job, get over here, stop just going out there marking your territory while your family's literally starving. Get over
Mm-hmm.
here and do your job.
You know, Sapolsky talks about baboons because one of his things about why baboons translated so well to his transition to human brain development was that, like Western society, they spend about 3 or 4 hours managing food demands for the day, and then they have the rest of the day to make each other's lives completely miserable. And he said that's why they're more like us than like the chimpanzees in behavior, because chimpanzees spend most of their time trying to survive and then they just groom each other the rest of the time. Where baboons will groom each other a little bit, but then they get bored. And so they find the next one down on the notch to stress them out, you know. Uh, but to tie that won't do anything if not made to what we're talking about to humans, you no longer have to have a healthy physique for me to be attracted to you. Well, what do guys do more for, sex, food, or shelter? This is another downfall of man, but it's, you know, it makes sense. They will stop making their shelter and hunting their food if that just right sexual encounter is sitting right there. And by just right, that's a very broad umbrella. So, especially if you live in the wild. So, if you don't motivate the man with that access to that thing that he finds more important than shelter and food, they're not going to do anything to improve that until the Western phenomena of midlife crisis happens, where they're starting to get just as dissatisfied with their partner as their partner is dissatisfied with them, because men value youth. And in order to keep that guy around, you got to get that. Sorry. Do we want to transition?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to, but let's talk about this because apparently it's still going on out there.
No,
I
we're at a good point. Now we've gotten to the phase where the memes talking about being tired of the meme has already started.
Okay. Does that mean we're almost done? All right. Uh, the memes I saw that made me go, what is going on here? What are people talking about? The one I saw was the I don't know if it was from a movie or if it's just from him standing outside and some paparazzi took it, but that picture of Ben Affleck holding a cigarette in his mouth and he's just got this look of, ugh, I'm just done with life right now. And it was the Huck to a girl's dad right now. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Then I had to go figure out what's going on here and go, oh,
Okay, so it wasn't the actual video that I really wanted to talk about, though. Have you actually watched the video too?
yeah.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to talk about was the follow up from the other community. First, there was a false story that she was a preacher's daughter, but it's not the fact that the story was false. It was the people who reacted to it. It was, I don't know what percentage of it is of the church anymore, but it was the damn to brimstone and fire crowd, and the name was wrong in the original story, and it was a to use that the pastor's name, and everybody's response to that, oh, she should do that. I'm like, I was a little upset of the it was like the shame walk in Game of Thrones. It's like shame, 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 and everybody even trashing the dad. You didn't do a good job. You didn't do this. Then when her real name came out was when the community she's apparently a young school teacher. I don't know if it's elementary or preschool, but everybody that saw that meme and knew who she was were demanding her get fired from her job and all of these other things. So I was just like, I was actually very disappointed with the response, because a meme's going to be a meme. If you're going to get annoyed by it, it'll be gone in a week, because that's how fast these things go now. But it was basically the reaction to just a semi-drunk girl giving a funny answer to a stupid question.
Mhm. My frustration with all this nonsense was, um, first of all, to your point, it's just another in a long line of viral memes and videos. This is not new. We have seen this before. This is just what happens to get people's attention right now, first of all. Um, and then secondly, the reaction to it. Okay, so now that there's this story out there that she's a preacher's daughter, now it matters. Now people are upset. Now
No,
people
no,
think,
what I think it did was that gets you into the algorithm of the ultra conservatives.
I don't know if that's it and that's what the crossover was, but my initial reaction to people getting all upset about it was, if this is improper behavior, it's improper behavior. The fact that you now think she's a preacher's daughter makes it more worser. No, it if you think this is improper behavior, you should be saying this is improper behavior and we shouldn't be celebrating this.
Well, here's one thing about that. When it comes to it would be Islamic and Judaism and Christianity, the why would that kind of behavior be really shameful is because it implies that you're promiscuous. We don't know that from that video. We don't know if she's got one partner, if she's had 100 partners. We don't know. If she keeps the guy happy in bed, maybe she's had a long-term partner because she keeps him happy in bed, because that was the question. What do you do to drive your man crazy in bed? And she said, you got to give him that tua, spit on that thing. That doesn't tell you that she's a harlot.
And what people on my side should be pointing out is the why do we celebrate salacious behavior in public? Because Jason Whitlock made this point a while back that I think it was at the beginning of June where, you know, why are we heterosexuals and people who profess to be Christians, why are we getting all mad about Pride Month? We've been putting our sexuality out there in the public space for decades. Why do you think they're not going to? The fact that the fact that their antics uh repulse you, or you think they're wrong, or you think they're going too far, or whatever. But he's right in that the sexualization of everything has been going on for decades, and it's just accepted as norm, but it's not really any different than what's happening at these over the top pride parades. It's the Victoria's Secret catalog isn't that much different than what's on that pride float in the thongs and assless chaps. I really hate saying assless chaps. I should say that all chaps are assless. That's how chaps work. Anyway, it's just minor bugaboo of mine. But and that to me is what is so frustrating about a situation like this, because I'm fine with the shame walk because we should have shame. It, if not for the an act itself, but the hey, how about we keep private stuff private? Why do we got to throw it all out there in public all the time? This is improper behavior, improper question, improper moments, and whatever happened to what happens in my bedroom stays in my bedroom. Okay, well then keep it there.
Okay, so I can agree on one point and disagree on another. It does say something that these street interviews are like the most viral, popular ones
Mm-hmm.
you can find on Instagram or TikTok.
It's also
Uh,
not an accident these interviews are almost always with someone who is clearly soused.
exactly. Yeah. So you are approaching drunk people on the street who aren't trying to be famous,
But you're trying
but
to provoke a reaction.
you're trying to provoke an reaction. They're intoxicated usually, uh, and this is actually something that should be discussed in the legal realm in the proper place in the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
That person is technically, I mean, unless you can prove they signed a document that says you can use this, that seems to be accepted on social media, but that would never be accepted if I just filmed you and
It
then
depends.
I just
So,
send it to
so
all your friends.
we
Yeah.
have single party and dual party consent states. Most states are single party, meaning so long as I consent to being in this, video, that's fine. All right. Well, that there are some problems there to begin with, but the bigger problem is I think
Okay,
you were
so
also making this
yeah,
point is how can that person consent to anything when they're
intoxicated.
inebriated?
Yeah, yeah.
That person
Me
can't
Too
even legally
crowd, you should
drive
be
right
fighting
now.
this fight, by the way.
Yeah.
Because this is a verbal sexual assault, basically. You're getting people to talk about their intimate moments while they're intoxicated
When they normally
for
would
your
if they
own
weren't
personal
intoxicated. Yep.
profit.
Yep.
Because I guarantee she didn't get any money from that. Now,
Which
at this point of fame, she could probably open an OnlyFans and never even have to get naked and make a shit ton of money. But that other than that, no, she wasn't looking to make a viral moment.
mhm.
She gave an intoxicated, honest answer to a question. I mean, if anybody can be expected to not do something stupid like that, it's not stupid at the time. It's this guy I don't even know because I hadn't even heard of this streetwalker before until it went famous filming this one. Uh, she probably didn't know him either
Yeah.
because everybody's putting a camera in your face these days, especially if you're in
You're
those
putting a
really,
camera in your own face a lot of the
you're putting a
times.
camera in your own face. So she was a little intoxicated. She probably thought the answer was funny. She may tell that joke with her friends all the
Mm-hmm.
time. We don't know that. That could
Mm-hmm.
be her go-to when all these girls get like little birds and talk about their boyfriends and stuff. Trust me, because I've actually been the patsy in some of these groups, just because for some reason girls trust me.
Th-
But
th- this is
the,
just one of those infuriating moments that we've had a number of these, which is that I hate them because everything about them, or at least so much about them, is wrong, and so much of the discourse isn't even looking at those things. But maybe is picking up on one wrong thing, but then arguing about it in a dumb way, and not even looking at all the other things about this whole situation that are just ugly.
yeah, and there's also the human just compulsion to try to perform when there's a camera in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the expectation of where this would go versus I'm talking to a guy and we're bantering back and forth. It just so happens it was to somebody who can put it on the internet and go viral with it because
Mm-hmm.
apparently he had enough followers. But I've listened, go watch some of those guys. This was mild compared to some of the answers you get. Oh, I think I saved one earlier just to be able to
Oh,
say it.
geez.
Where did I put that?
Please no. Stop. Don't
Nope,
do it.
that's the wrong one. Oh, okay. So this one. Okay, this gives me Beyonce vibes. Okay.
Oh, jeez.
Told my man I was out with my mom. He didn't know mom stood for my other man. Those are the ones that should be discussed more. There's plenty of those out there.
Yeah.
Uh, but this one, the difference was it was funny, it was cute, it looked genuine, not rehearsed, and it was a perfect meme moment because it was so much different from all these other not as uh genuine as
Mhm.
that person. So it's gonna die though. I do have
I
to
hope so.
maybe I have to make a counter meme because I have to disagree with the hawk to a girl herself. If you think you can give me a hand job, no matter how much you hawk to on that, better than I can give me a hand job, I've got 30 some odd years of practice, okay? I know exactly my buttons. Hand job advice
Uh,
for all you women out there. Put it in your mouth. That's 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 goal that you should pay my
uh,
$65 hourly rate for that, ladies. That'll fix your world there.
I hate this timeline. Stupid CERN reactor. All right. Are we done? Are we done yammering about everything that is stupid and that I hate?
Yeah, I think we covered all three topics more efficiently than we usually do.
So Friday we'll have time day, which hopefully won't be this annoying. I can't remember what we're coming up on though, so no promises there.
Oh, presidential debate.
Oh,
That'll be the next
jeez.
topic.
That's tomorrow night, isn't it? I
Yep.
heard the 27th. Is that still on?
Yep. Well,
All
from
right.
the good news is compared to others, apparently because Sleepy Joe gets sleepy, they limited it to an hour, not 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
They tried to pretend it was on CNN's end of the
Everything about
scheduling.
this is stupid. Oh, so yeah, next Wednesday won't definitely won't be any better because everything about this is stupid and so much of the discourse isn't even remotely on target. Yay. All right. Well, in that case, I'm gonna go lay down because I don't feel good.
Well, it's lunchtime for me, so we will see. Oh no, no, I got a client at 2. Okay, it is not lunchtime for me. I forgot the reschedule. So yeah, we'll see you next time. No disclaimers needed, I think. Other
No,
than oh
no.
god, no, no, I'll give a disclaimer. We technically semi gave health advice indirectly by saying don't have a dad bod as it's described.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be strong, healthy, lean, eat your vegetables, but also eat your meat.
Uh,
Later, guys.